Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good ever what time of day it happens to be that you are listening to the Tattooed Teacher podcast. On today's episode, I have the amazing Sally Irwin. Now, I first met Sally pre-COVID, so I'm going to say 2017, I think it was. And Sally was having a roundtable meeting about her not-for-profit that she was thinking of expanding up into the sunny state of Queensland. And we've stayed in contact ever since. We've worked together, and we've bounced ideas off. I've helped her with things. She's helped me with things. And now we're just having a chat. So you, our lovely audience, can hear what she actually does on her day-to-day. So, Sally, thanks for joining us.
No problem. It's great to be on. It's good to see you again.
Absolutely. I mean, technology is amazing, and it's great that we've stayed in contact, because I think what you are doing for people in Australia is amazing. So what you are actually doing, you run a organisation, a not-for-profit called the Freedom Hub. So for those who haven't heard it or gone and had an amazing coffee that helps people within Australia, and I'm going to let you expand on it more, what exactly is the Freedom Hub?
So the Freedom Hub is actually a registered charity, and we help people rebuild their lives who have experienced modern day slavery in Australia. And we also partner in the fight to end slavery in our country and globally. So it's a very broad summary, that is, of what we do. But it started in Sydney, so it's very Sydney centric for a bit, but we've got quite a strong movement of volunteers and survivors of slavery in Queensland, in Brisbane as well. So we no longer have our cafe out there, but we try and self-fund ourselves through cafes and through hospitality and through ethical business services, which is a big part of what we do now, which is consulting and helping companies respond to slavery or lifting humanity in their business processes and protocols. So it's we do a lot. We do that. Got 5 social enterprises to help fund the hundreds of survivors that we have in our survivor schools in Sydney and in Brisbane.
That's a huge task. Now, just looking at it from the ground up, starting a charity
Yeah.
is in and of itself a challenge. Starting a charity to help those who can't help themselves, again, another amazing endeavor. But to keep going the way you have and to continue to build. Now, you've talked about slavery, you've talked about ethics, sustainability. So we'll get to those things. But firstly, how did you get to the Freedom Hub? Where did this start? Because in schools, we talk about social justice all the time. But where did this start? Where did your passion for the lost and those who couldn't help themselves come from?
Well, it really started when we were living in Germany, in Berlin. Well, it sort of started before that, actually, to be honest. My daughter did a World Vision leadership course, and she found out that slavery was happening through a World Vision leadership thing that they were doing. It was about child labour in India. And she came home in tears from school, and she was about 15, I think, 14 or 15. She said, "Did you know that slavery didn't end with William Wilberforce? I can't believe this." Anyway, so she got quite upset about that and decided that she was going to be the next William Wilberforce. I've met many people who've been through a very similar story. And so, as every good mother does, I started sort of finding out information about slavery for her and not really thinking I was doing anything for myself in that space. I was just helping my daughter. And then we got posted as diplomats across to the Australian Embassy in Berlin. And it was there that she moved into year 11 and 12 and really started with the International Baccalaureate. You actually write theses, you don't do assignments like we do. She was having to have all these massive $3,000-4,000 words on topics she's passionate about, and she kept picking slavery. And so I soon realised that this was more than just a 14-year-old in tears over slavery. She really wanted to do something about it, and her goal then became that she wanted to actually do human rights law. And that was sort of an unheard of thing, to be honest. Around not many people were human rights laws, and I said to her, "You realise you're going to be the poorest lawyer in the world if you pursue this, because no one's going to pay you." Anyway, she's, "No, that's what I'm going to do." And it was probably a year in, or maybe 6 months in, that I realised that as a diplomat, I wasn't allowed to talk about sensitive subjects with ambassadors from countries that are what we call sending countries. So most of the victims of slavery have come from Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, and of course, I'm a diplomat's wife drinking champagne every night and having to stand there and not say anything is not my character. I'm a talker, and I like want to change the world. So I got more and more frustrated with my inability to do anything while she's telling me more and more stuff. And so I decided that I would volunteer and try and I thought, well, I can't talk about it politically because my husband, I can imagine the Sydney Morning Herald diplomat sent home because wife's been too vocal. So I decided I would they couldn't say anything about my stories. So I thought I'm going to go and volunteer where these girls are being sex trafficked out of Eastern Europe into Berlin, and I'm going to volunteer there and just I can tell stories. If someone says to me, what have you did today, I can tell them a story. So it was really that's where my life changed because suddenly I'm face to face. I'll never forget being a North Shore Sydney girl sitting the first time next to a prostitute and thinking, I'm actually talking to a prostitute. What do I do? What do I say? Like it was the scariest moment. And I'm sure she was just as scared. But over that 4 years, my whole life changed because I was seeing the consequences of somebody dying of AIDS because they're selling themselves for €2 because they've just got to make money for the night or they get beaten up or whatever. So it was just an horrific experience, but one I couldn't walk away from. I couldn't walk away from it. So I kept doing it and kept going, but I couldn't, the frustrations of not being able to lobby, talk, and do something to solve the problem really came to a head. And so as soon as I landed back on Australian soil, for the rest of my life, I was going to be helping those girls. That's what I thought I was going to be doing. And I sort of was. I was trying to do some fundraising and stuff. And then someone said to me, why don't you help people who have experienced this in Australia? You sort of had to pick me up off the floor. I'm like, come on, as if this is happening in Australia.
Yeah, the lucky country.
Exactly, the lucky country. And to this day, I still say that we shouldn't have it in our country because over there you've got, I was shocked enough that it was happening in Europe. I thought it was definitely an Asian or South American sort of thing because I thought it was linked very closely to poverty, which it is. But they have poverty in the Eastern European countries. They have organised crime gangs that do an awful lot of the trading. They have corrupt police that are involved in the selling and buying and selling of humans and people. They had no borders. The borders were down for them, for they could, have a container full of women just cross across. No one's checking from Poland or from Bulgaria into Berlin. So there's a million reasons why you can see that people end up trapped in slavery overseas. But in Australia, where we're an island, we've got human rights, we've got fair work, we've got lawyers, we've got police that are not corrupt. We don't have the massive organised crime gangs and so it just makes no sense. It's pure greed for it to happen in our country. So that's when I really went, well, now it's game on. I can speak the language, I can lobby governments, I can do whatever I can now. I'm on my home soil that I couldn't do over there. So it's almost like all this pent up frustration and anger. But in reflection, I can see it was good that I couldn't speak about it or do much about it because I think I had to live it and live that frustration for this passion now that still gets me out of bed every morning that says there's people in our country, in Australia, that are actually being exploited terribly. So I have to do something about it. So that's where it's all come from.
So, I mean, there's so much to unpack just in that. I mean, you would think, you watch TV and you see you're the wife of a diplomat. So you would think, well, hey, you've almost got an in to actually affect change somewhere. But the reality is that no, you have to have your airs and graces, I assume. Now, look, I've never been in that circle, never spoken with diplomats as such. I mean, I've spoken with Gavin, but in a professional sense. So you'll be going, oh, okay. And then you go, hold on, but then you're talking about slavery and you're talking about, we think, William Wilberforce, Abraham Lincoln, that slavery is a thing of the past, but it's, as I remember, there's actually more humans in slavery in one form or another today than there has ever been in history.
That's right. Exactly.
And then you touch on, okay, so there's corruption and politicians and police, and there's all these things that are happening in the background, and it just, I think it just baffled when we first talked, it baffled me that again this was sort of happening in Australia, and you think, yeah, okay, like drug cartels,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the stereotype Southeast Asian sex traffickers, but to know that it happens here in our country and what we see, the lucky country,
Yeah.
the land of have a go, it's it's frightening as such.
Yeah. 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 It's yeah, and what I discovered here, of course, all I experienced over there because I was in the particular area, the street where girls, um, are trafficked to. I had no knowledge of forced labor, forced marriage, organ harvesting. Like I had no knowledge of all these other forms of slavery, and it's just growing all the time. So while Australia may have defined 7 types of slavery, it's just as how clever is the person that's doing the exploiting. They could have you in any kind of situation. Like the latest big one around the world is the scamming. There's whole cities now that everybody is tricked into coming, and they're in factories and they're just doing the scam calls. And it's not just the odd there's warehouse, it's a whole city of nothing but people in slavery overseas scamming us. So, and of course in Australia we've just unveiled the Palm scheme, which is specific. I can't even, never remember what it's called. But anyway, the Palm scheme is a visa where our government provides Pacific Islanders a visa to come and do our harvest fields, work in our meat packing industry, and in lots of our agriculture and farming industries. And that visa links them to the farm, who, if that person's exploiting, or there's a recruiter that's employed them that's exploiting them, that they can't leave because they lose their visa. So that's all just being unveiled. There's a parliamentary inquiry into it right now. So we're expecting thousands to come forward probably next year, which is another reason we're trying to scale so much. Yeah. So it's constant. There's always new ways to trap somebody and force them into a position where they're being, and it can often just start with exploitation. People say, oh, that's just exploitation, but it could start with the person taking $5 at a 7-Eleven store or something to
Yeah.
clean or to do whatever, and they think that's loads of money because in their country they might have got $1 or $2, and they think, "Wow, I've tripled my wage," or whatever. But eventually the mind control gets in, and then they start to say, to control them, if you tell anybody you're here, you'll lose your visa, you'll be put in jail. I've had a Muslim survivor be told he'd have his legs executed because Australians hate Muslims, so he can't tell anybody that this is happening because we'll execute him, or we'll yeah, it's just the lies that they're controlled with psychologically is why they don't run, which is one of the questions everyone says to me, why don't they run? Because they are under control. And as we're learning more about domestic violence, people are starting to understand that. They're understanding the psychological control that humans can have over humans. So, yeah, it's very, very broad, and it's a minimum of 41,000 people in Australia. This is before the Palm scheme. This was a figure that came out, 41,000. And we know for a fact since that figure from the Department of Criminology, who did some research into it, that only 1 in 5 survivors or victims of slavery are identified. So we know that's a very low figure.
So that 41,000 could actually be closer to 200,000
Yep.
in reality.
In reality, yes, and that's not including now what finding out about the Palm scheme and the James Cockayne, who's the Anti-Slavery Commissioner for New South Wales. He went into Leeton and Griffith and these places where he was hearing about potential slavery cases, and it was there talking with the various mayors and everything that he's said there's thousands, 2 to 3,000 in just those 2 towns that they believe are in a position of full exploitation. He's surfacing around the word slavery, but we believe it'll be slavery
Yeah.
when the investigation's done. Now that's just New South Wales. We know for a fact because we've got at least 15 of them that are on the Palm scheme and in the Survivor School in Brisbane. So we've known for a long time that this sort of slavery is happening in Queensland, but we hadn't appreciated New South Wales. So imagine when we multiply all that out.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling to sort of wrap your head around that there could be up to 200,000 people being exploited in from one level to another. It could be, I guess, and no exploitation is acceptable, but it could be from very, I guess, minor or mild exploitation up to what we would call slavery. But what's the difference between, and why are people so cautious of going, it's only exploitation, it's not slavery? Is there a semantic difference? Is there a
Oh,
legal difference? How does
yeah,
it how do they determine?
there's definitely legal definitions for each of those that the government's defined. One of our problems is around the world, we've all got different definitions. So every country is different. But in Australia, ours have all got a legal definition for sure. So you can look them up. I'm not even going to try and recite them. I'm not a lawyer.
Yep.
But for me, the difference is they've lost their freedom to leave. That would be the key to making the difference between exploitation. I've accepted $5 an hour from this particular company, but I'm free to walk out that door tomorrow.
Yep.
It's when you're still getting that $5 or not even getting that $5 anymore, but you are terrified. You believe if you leave, you're going to have some massive dire consequences. Be that your family are being threatened to be killed, be that a Muslim's being executed, being whatever that control is that makes them feel that, even if it's not true, but they feel in their head or believe 100% that if they walk out that door, they're done, they're in trouble, or someone in their family's in trouble. That's, to me, that's Sally's layman's terms of what slavery is. It's no, you've lost your freedom. And with a domestic violence situation, a lot of people go, well, it's just domestic violence. It's not. If they've lost their phone, their bank account, they're not allowed to leave the house without the supervision of the person that's controlling them. That's that's slavery. That is,
Yeah.
it's complete loss of freedom.
Yeah. Do you think I mean, we'll just pivot to DV a little bit. Do you think with the awareness, especially the social awareness of what domestic violence actually is, it's not just a partner, and I'll just use the word partner because it works
Yeah, it does.
both ways. The partner gets maybe verbally abused or physically abused, that it society being made aware that it's not just a weak person or a bully or
Yeah,
someone who's drunk. It's a control thing. It's the person who's inflicting whatever they're doing to that person. It comes down to what they want and their selfishness and their greed in whatever aspect that might be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's complete control for their own selfish reasons. This was greed, whatever you want to call it, and that's, I think, all slavery in Australia. That's the basis of it. It's to make money or to have greed, or it's selfish. It's yeah, it's that's probably the one uniform thing. Everything else is different types, different people, different styles of controlling other people. Yeah,
But it's a worry. So within the Australian borders, predominantly, I guess, is there one type of slavery that is more prominent, whether it be like workforce, or
yeah.
is there trafficking?
It's
Is there
hard. It's
forced
statistic.
marriage?
Yeah, statistically, it's forced marriage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but we don't have many come forward.
It's hard to tell.
Isn't statistically, the stats are based on people that come forward, so that 1 in 5. And the reason I believe this is the forced marriage come forward is because most of them are schoolgirls. They're young women who have grown up in Australia and are being educated, and so they've learnt that actually my friends don't have to get married to some old bloke. They they can go to university. Why can't I? So they've got more guts to run because they're Australian. They either are
Yeah,
Australian or they've lived here long enough and they're educated to know. But the migrants that come in from another country, or the people that have, or even our Indigenous people, there's plenty of people that have ended up in control in forced labour situations, but they're not going to run and come forward. And the immigrants, particularly the Asian ones, are particularly shy and quiet and scared. They don't even want to. They're first of all scared to leave, but if they do leave because they've had enough, they often don't tell anybody, and they're not going to come forward and talk about it. So it is very hard to measure what it really is. But within our school, say we're close to 200 survivors at the moment, um, majority would be forced labour, then forced marriage, then sexual servitude. I would say they would be the top three. Yeah.
right.
Hmm. The
Yeah,
cleaning industry, the forced labour and stuff is also coming about because of the Modern Slavery Act, because of the cleaning industry and the various industries where these great big corporates are now having to report on making sure their people they employ in contract using correct contracts. So that's really helping lift the figures and we get them sent to us because they know that we train them. So they go, oh, we found a survivor, quick, ring the Freedom Hub. Yes. So
right. I mean, I guess the more we talk about it, and the more we discuss them, the deeper we could go, and we could get into some real intricacies of
Who's paying the men that empty your garbage bins? Who's paying the men that the high-rise buildings where people come in at night, they're bussed in, they're cleaning all night, everyone walks in, the fairies have been and cleaned their high-rise. Who's paying them? Where are they living? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's a lot not uncovered.
Yeah, that's and I mean, which is fantastic, which is an amazing, which is a good thing, and it can only be beneficial for society for those who are helpless to be helped.
Yeah,
And I mean, and that's what, as humans, that's what we should be doing. We should be helping the phrase a biblical term, we should be helping the widows and the orphans.
yeah,
Because they're the ones who need the most help. But to do everything that you're doing, and we sort of touched on it very earlier about the cafe and the hospitality services. Um, how what you do on a day to day basis to help these survivors, that must cost a lot of money. And you're a charity, so
yeah.
how do you raise the money to help these survivors of trafficking within our borders?
Yeah. So for me, that was a problem because I'd never run a charity before. And also growing up in the 70s, seeing a kid in Ethiopia starving to death and flies on their nose and a big swollen belly, and my parents saying, eat your veggies because there's people dying. The connection never happened. So I'm
Yeah,
just like, I just know that there's got to be practical ways you can do stuff, not just donate money because there's a kid on TV, right? So I sort of really didn't want to be that charity person trying to ask for money and sell people's stories. I just don't believe in that stuff. So being an ex-businesswoman, I thought after about a year, I thought, okay, now I've got to do something with my business skills to do this. We are the second social enterprise officially in Australia because at the time, every social enterprise, which was Thank You Water, there's very few around. There was Thank You Water, there's just a few. I studied them all, but they were all just giving a percentage or all, but they were giving their money to another charity to do
yeah.
something, to feed or to give water. So we had to spend quite a lot of money at the time to find out if we could do that, but for ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was one case before us. They found a precedent, so I didn't have to go through all the legals. So that was brilliant once I had that precedent. So I know that we were early. That's why the social enterprise world for me is very exciting because I've always said for 12 years that one day people are going to go to the hairdressers based on their values. They're going to go to the bank that has their values. And we're seeing that with Gen Z. We are already seeing it. The stats are out. 75% of them will change brand if they think that the values aren't right. So there's a few things happening in the world right now that could be changing a little bit of that, but we won't go
Yeah.
down that rabbit hole. I don't even want to start it. But the reality is that people want to actually do that. So I decided deliberately to go with making money through business and having a business for good because not only did I believe that the world was going to go that way and customers wanted that, which they do now, but I also just didn't want to be asking for money. I just didn't like the model and I didn't like selling stories. So that's why I decided business. Now, this is where I made the mistake. I actually thought, oh, how hard could it be to run a cafe? I'll just start one of those. And to this day, it is still my biggest headache. I
Yep.
just cannot get over it. Very fortunately that we've pivoted most of our business now to ethical business services and consulting and helping companies respond to slavery and look at their contracts and look at their cleaners and look at, all the training that we do in there. The cafe business is a very tough business, but also, and that's why we had to close the Queensland one because I couldn't get up there during COVID and it was just too hard to try and run a cafe interstate. But the Sydney one is in a venue that's beautiful. So before you know it, I had to become an events planner and manager because people were coming in and going, can we pay you to hire this space? Can we have a wedding here? Can we? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I had to find someone in the industry and sit down and shadow them and learn how to structure events and weddings and pay and do all that. So then it went from a cafe to then an event venue. And then people started saying, oh gosh, can we get your food because it's ethical? Can we have some catering? So next thing you know, been a catering. So here's Miss Non Never Done Hospo, who's now had 10 years of hospitality. I'm just bit over it myself. But anyway, I shouldn't say that. We're actually growing. We're getting bigger. We're having bigger hospitalities I can't even think about. And I'm not going to say the details yet because we haven't signed the contract. But yeah, it's a definite growth area. But we've decided as a board, because we've had 10 years, we've decided for the next 10, the vision is by 2030 is to have a survivor school in every state. And
Yep.
then each survivor school is funded by a business or businesses. So our first goal will be Brisbane because when we sold the cafe in Queens in the Gold Coast, we use that money to employ someone up there, and they're doing great, and we're onboarding all these survivors. But as you said, they cost a lot of money. So
Yeah.
it's starting to suck out of Sydney, and that's not working. So we're going to a big drive for us the rest of this year is to start finding a school and businesses that will align with us in Brisbane, so that this person that's employed up there can actually have their own income and their own budget. And then we'll move to Melbourne, because we've got a few survivors in Melbourne, but we've just kept them online because we just can't afford the team down there just yet. So we've got an infrastructure issue right now. But one of the things about the hospitality is that the board has decided that they have to be funded. So unless Mirvac or somebody turns around and says, here, have a free cafe, I don't think a cafe will be happening in Brisbane. But there will definitely be catering, because the corporates want that. We've got to find a white label organisation or someone that'll partner with us for catering. And there will definitely be the ethical business services up there as well. So we will have consultants and people. So that's sort of the model that's going forward for growth. But it is very business focused. I'm so glad, for a few reasons, that I chose that, or that time ago that I went down this path. Not because of the cafe, that's still
Yeah.
a headache, but because what happened during COVID is we had a number of revenue streams. So while everything died, we still had a little from each stream.
Yeah.
Every other charity, just many closed, and many people that just had a business closed. So we had multiple revenue. We could pivot, and so that really helped. But coming out of COVID, as we're seeing right now in the world, charities are struggling. The economy is so bad, people are not giving. So there's a lot of charities really struggling. And while we're a charity, they're starting to want to have social impacts themselves. So they're wanting to have our catering. They're wanting to have us come in and do consulting. Why pay for some lawyer to buy a Ferrari when that same money can be paying for a couple of survivors to get through our school? You know what I mean? So the money we're charging corporate rates to, consultant rates to consult, but they're paying that anyway to somebody who's just going to use it for their own benefit, versus us, who's going to actually feed 100% of our profits into helping our survivors. So we got to 65% self-funded pre-COVID, went right down to about 30% during
Yeah.
COVID. I mean, we had to really rely on JobKeeper and all those things. But we're back up. We're back up to 65% self-funded right now. So it's a good model. And I never want to be more than 70%. I think people want to, philanthropists, foundations, not government. We don't get any government funding. We're self-funded so that we can actually do all the things that they need and not spend hours doing acquittals and red tape and what the government wants. So we literally can, if those 30%, it means we can budget. If we're self-funded by 70%, I can employ people and safely knowing I can pay them, rather than losing sleep at night going, where am I going to get the money to pay them next week? That's the
Yeah.
theory. There has been plenty of nights where I still think that. I still get myself into trouble sometimes with cash flow. And we're going to be in trouble for cash flow this year because we're scaling. This is the thing. Next is Brisbane, then Melbourne. So we've really got to monitor this carefully and how we grow, and try and get businesses aligned with what we're doing. Yeah.
So when you talk about ethics in business, I mean, it's not just about being nice and treating people nicely. It's not just about making sure that you have a lawyer read over your contract. When you approach businesses, or when you approach suppliers for the various events that you may have,
Yeah.
or you're buying new stationery, or you've got to buy whatever it might be
Yeah.
to fit out something in the survivor school, which we will get to in just a little bit. How, like, what makes an ethical business ethical?
Yeah. So a thing happened in the 60s, I think it was, the United Nations Guiding Principles for Businesses. That was established, and there's a whole history in how long that took, but that was established and signed by many, many countries. So they're called the UNGPs. So all our training and equipping of businesses, we bring back to those, because every single modern slavery act of whatever kind, be it the Labor Act of California, be it the CSDDD in Europe, be whatever, they're all based around those principles. So if we can train a business to try and align with those principles, it's like the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. It's like the business goals for being an ethical business. So when we do training, we try and actually help companies look at that. But we would always start with risk. What is your highest risk? And that can be country risk or product risk, investment risk. If there are a lot of companies have gone down the ESG, gone down the environmental, and they're not really thinking about the S.
Yeah.
and they don't realize how much slavery is in the E. All our solar panels, every microchip, every, so they think they're doing all this great stuff for the planet, but they haven't thought through what they're actually doing for the people in that. So we really try and spend some time educating the people. So it's not about compliance anymore. It's about what they're doing to the environment and to the social and to the impacts that their decisions are having. So if we can spend time moving them into the compassion side more than the compliance side, it's a lot easier. You can tell very quickly the ones that go, I've got to do this. How do I do it? What do I do? Give me a template. They don't care less. You can
Yeah.
tell. So we'll still charge them an arm and a leg to pay that template or whatever, because we're not going to say no to the money so we can help more survivors. But we don't tend to partner with them. We're very partnered. We're very relational with our corporates or the different organisations we work with. And we're relational in the way that we help them with their response of lifting humanity in business. And they employ our survivors. They'll provide laptops if we need them. There's things that they'll do, and they're giving direct social impact, which in turn helps their compliance anyway. So it's a beautiful relationship. It's a shared value that we're offering.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, I'm sure there's businesses that they've gone, hey, we're going to try and do this because it'll tick a box and it'll make
Yeah.
us look good, and they're the ones that quickly go, and I'm assuming discerningly go, hey, look, I'm going to give you what you should do, but we might just leave it at that. Thank you for your service and move on. But then I guess you probably walk into another large corporation or even a small corporation and go, hey, this is what we do. And they're like, yeah, we got to do this. We're going to, yeah, it might cost us a bit of money here, but it's going to pay dividends in the long run. We're
Yeah.
in it for the long game. So you mentioned before, like the younger generations are coming through, and they're quite happy to spend a little more or shop or stop buying a certain brand in order to go, hold on, no, I've got to look at the bigger picture of, okay, who am I and who am I actually helping? So do you find in business, I guess maybe the younger
Yeah.
CEOs,
I
the
have.
younger CFOs help drive what you do?
Yeah, 100%. This is why we really try and go into companies and say, let's go bottom up. Why don't we have a lunch and learn? And like, we'll start there if we can. Because if you go bottom up and you get the lunch and learn and we start telling stories, before you know it, we've got a whole group of people that are ambassadors within that organization who want to see change. And the reason, I mean, I'm obviously showing my age, but most of the women that are executives at getting us in now were at uni when I started all this, and I was speaking in all the business schools or the law schools on our model.
Yeah.
And I've seen them grow up, get through school, and now they're in positions where they can go, hang on, I'm going to get the freedom up in here. We're going to do this. The boards are still very governance focused and what's the tick box. And every board we've had to train quite a few boards, but you literally got 10 minutes. You walk in and it's all about risk. Here's what happens to you. You're the guys going to jail. If the guy on if the sales rep's tapping and going with that card at the petrol station and they're spending it on some chocolate that's got this and flowers that have got, you're in trouble. So let's get this woven into the fabric of the whole culture of your company. And so working bottom up means you can actually have them. And before you know it, those people are going to the bosses and to the modern slavery working group or to the lawyers and saying, have you thought about this? Because I reckon in my department, that's what's happening. So we'll go from the lunch and learns to those sort of workshops where we actually get them into different departments, and we'll have all the HR people together and the procurement people together and have them with a big sheet of butcher paper and literally mapping supply chains. And one of my favourite ones are the leasing agents, all the real estate agents. And with CommBank, we did all their leasing. In fact, we've done a few leasing, and they sit there, oh yeah, we just got 4 walls and a bit of carpet, no slavery in ours. By the time you sit down and actually get them with a bit of butcher paper and mapping, is it coming by aeroplane? Oh, look, gosh, there could be some slavery in the travel industry. Is it coming by shipping? There's plenty of slavery in the shipping industry. Like you start mapping just where that product comes from and how it gets into the country, and then what countries it's come from. Before you know it, because the Slavery Act is not about what it's about levels T1, T2, 3, 4, and 5. By the time we get down to the raw materials in the T5, they've got at least a dozen slaves working for them. So they're all like, oh my gosh, and that's the sort of education we need to have. Whereas a lot of the lobbying organisations in our country are focused on moving the government to have stricter and penalties and all this governance stuff, which is fine, and I love it. But for me, it's way too slow. We've got to see change now on the ground. So that's why I've sort of stepped quite out. I'm not out of, I'm still very involved in the lobbying, and I co-logo now. I don't write as many submissions as I used to. Once I got that, I was very active till the Modern Slavery Act came in. Um, and so, but since then, I've really backed right out because I can give them all that information, but they talk for 2 years. And in
Yeah.
Australia, it's about every 20 minutes we'll have a new survivor, a new victim in slavery. So, if you've waited 2 years, hello,
Yeah.
it's just too long. It's too long. So I'm not anti-government. Everyone thinks I am, but I'm not. I love that they're doing it. And I think the Modern Slavery Act has made a huge impact on opening doors for us to go in and talk to companies and organisations. And every one of those employees in every government agency and every nurse and hospital and every government agency have to comply to the Act. So they're all learning about slavery. Every business and corporate, they're all learning about slavery. For the first time in history, we can impact global slavery through those because 65% of the slavery in the world is in Asia Pacific, which is our shopping ground. So for the first time ever, Australians can actually impact global slavery. So I love what they're doing. But for the people every morning that are getting up and they don't even know if they're going to be alive tomorrow, it's too long. It's too
Yeah.
long.
Yeah, that must be tough for someone such as yourself, and I'm sure there's a number of people who have the same drive to affect change. And we all know, like I mean, in education, you talk to the teachers, and we want to see change now, but we know that the large governing bodies, the state governments, then the federal government, things aren't going to change quickly. We might see a small change, but then we won't see another one for 4 years.
Yeah.
Or they'll talk about one coming in, then there'll be a change of government, so that's kicked out the window. So I can see why you are not, and like you said, you're not anti-government, but I can see why you need to go to private enterprise and private business to go, hey, let's get some action happening right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So do you find that when you have these consultancy meetings, that they're sort of like their heads start spinning and they're going, but if we actually tried to make it like this, we'd go out of business. So is it more about awareness and getting them to go, okay, well, what can we actually sever and where do we look for a new supplier? Or what can we actually,
Right.
how do we do that? Because you would think, I mean, business like yourself, you're a charity that runs off a business model. So it's about making money. And
Yeah.
these private businesses are definitely about making money. And so they want to find the cheapest supplier um, for the cheapest product so they can have the highest profit margin. So how do you resolve that conflict?
Well, from a compliance perspective,
Yeah.
which is a bit different, I know, but just so you understand this, everyone has to report on or assess their risk in 3 areas, whether they're linked to slavery, contributing to slavery, or causing it. Right? I don't know that anyone's put up their hand yet saying they're causing it, but we say to them, everyone's linked, right? Everyone. So you can't go and say we've got no slavery in our company. So by law, you've got to do that. You've got to declare that you're at risk here, here, and here because you haven't done this, this, and this.
Yep.
So if this is a legal compliance, you've got to have budget for it. You've got to do something. So regardless of whether you're doing it now or later, it's going to cost you if you do it later because you're going to get caught. So
Yep.
that's the hard line. But we always say, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and get rid of suppliers. In fact, if you find somebody that you suspect has got really poor human rights in their supply chain or in their business or in their factory or wherever it is, you identify it, you can say, I'm at risk of this is what we're doing. I'm at risk of being, and this is what I'm doing. So we actually say to them, let's start with what you can do.
Yep.
So if it's just starting with saying to your suppliers and sending them a letter saying, we are going on the journey with the Freedom Hub, or we're going on a journey where we're going to start looking for the risk of slavery, and we'd love you to join us in that. You have a better relationship with your suppliers that you're meeting with. And we'd always try and start with the biggest spend and the highest risk. So that would be our advice. They have to put budget towards it, which is one other reason we love to go in and talk to the boards because they're the ones that actually put the money there.
Yep.
And they can't, we know, and the government knows, everyone knows you cannot. Like Mondelez, which has got the highest child labour in its chocolate in the world, it's Mars bars and all that stuff, that company have got a 20-year plan to get rid of child labour. Now, yes, as a purist, I'd go, that's way too long. But for goodness sake, at least they're doing something.
Yeah.
If we all just stopped eating chocolate, well, it'd never happen. So we've just got to get these companies across the line, and we've got to work out how to do it. And we've definitely at the Freedom Hub have worked with some very big corporates in what a lot of people would say you shouldn't go near because they're actually full of slavery. But that to me is bring it on. Let's
Yeah.
work with them. Let's just move that dial even a little bit. So that would be, we go in with that softly, gently sort of touch. Just let's do something. And it's a start. It also helps us get in and the trust with us. And once we're in, we can then start, hey, have you thought about actually having some contracts with your suppliers? It might say that they've got to look at their supply chain. Have you thought about having a whistleblower policy or something where worker voice can come to you so you're not caught out? Like we will go step at a time. So it doesn't have to be that expensive. We also do structure our payments, see. So all the passionate young B Corps and people that are startups and Gen Zs that want to do this, like genuinely want to, we will do everything we can to help them because they're in the same boat as us. They want to change the world. And so
Yeah.
we will do. But if the corporate's going to pay us, they might as well pay us the same amount they pay. I'm sure
Yeah.
we're under KPMG and Lend-Lease and all, the big Deloitte and stuff. I'm pretty sure we're under them in price. But if they're going to pay that amount of money for somebody to do it, because they've got to do it, they might
Yeah.
as well pay us and have the social impact. So
Absolutely.
it is an age-old question for anyone in social enterprise. It's not just slavery. It's the environment. Any social enterprise, the balance between profit and your cause and people is the problem.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm excited about the social enterprise space in our country, because as I told you earlier, at the beginning of time, there wasn't many. Now there's so many, there's hundreds, and the government's now forming for the first time. We're like where we were with slavery 10 years ago. The government's now pumping money into this sector and they're giving grants. And you couldn't even get a loan, a business loan, if you're a social enterprise. So that's changing. They're starting to come up with loan packages to help banks. They've realised how much social enterprise is actually saving the government in money because of all the
Oh,
work we
yeah.
do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. And I guess, it's good to see that, the hard work of yourself and others who have been driving this, you're starting to see, the buds of the fruit, not necessarily the
Absolutely.
fruit yet, but you're seeing those little buds starting to grow, which
Yep.
is amazing. So you've got this passion that you found about, initially from your daughter and then your time in Berlin. Then you said, I've got to do something about it. So you've built a business model. You are back to, which is probably better than probably most businesses. You're back to pre-COVID levels of finance, and you run this not slavery school, survivor school
Yeah. Yeah.
for the people who have been rescued and come out of the various forms of slavery and exploitation. But you hear a school and you go, well, okay, well, they've got to learn to read and write, and they've got to do all these sort of things. That's what we think of a school. But what actually is your survivor school? Like, because I'm assuming most of these people are adults.
Yes, 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 most of them. We only take down to 17 because I haven't got the guardianship money to do the legals on taking kids that are being forced into marriage. But from 17 on, we take them. But basically, yes, they are all adults. So the survivor school, funnily enough, another reason why for 4 years I spent time in Germany. I can look back and go, gosh, it was a life-changing experience. Was my experience living in a foreign country and not being able to speak. I literally built this school on that, because it got to the point where I wouldn't even ask over the counter. Berlin's changed a lot now and people speak English, but there was no English in 2008, very little English. And so I'd try and find the youngest checkout person because I knew there was a hope that they could speak some English. But I generally would do everything self-serve. There's no way I would go up to a counter and ask for something because I didn't know how. So, and also many years ago, I've done Train the Trainer, like I'm cert for Train the Trainer, and I've been in training. I used to be the state training manager for L'Oreal of Paris at one stage. So I've done training in my life as well, and it's very practical. So it's different. I suppose it's different to teaching. It's training.
Yep.
So, and also at one point in my life, for a very long time in my life, I was in youth work, doing youth work, and that's very active, as you know, in schools. So I've always been, and I'm not particularly, I haven't done a degree, like I'm not highly educated. So I'm also someone that learns from what I do. And potentially now, you can look back in there wasn't such a thing as ADD or, any of the
Yeah.
stuff that potentially I have kinesthetic learning was unheard of. So I potentially would have fitted into a number of those boxes back in the day, I think. So for me, creating classes that could actually equip them as opposed to teach them was the answer. I had to. So I wrote all the curriculum for 15 courses. Over the years, we've now honed them and we have survivors help improve and work on them. But they were all designed at the beginning to be life skills, to be skills to actually help you live in a country that you don't know anything about, learn about money that some of them have never even seen because they've had someone controlling their money all their life, or they've come in from, an Arab country. They've never had money themselves as a woman, so there's all the practical stuff. If we teach, and it got to the point where we were starting to help them get jobs and get them work ready. So if it's a real example, I'll tell you, is if we're actually teaching them to get ready to have an office job and they've never seen a laptop or they've never seen a printer before, we actually train them and they've got to print or they've got to scan on a photocopier, not their bums, but their hands, and email them to me or someone sitting in the Freedom Hub office, so we actually make them do the things that they're learning. We take them to a library. We'll show them how to sign up and get a card. We teach them the transport system. We actually go out on trains and do it. So every single part of the class is designed that you're not just learning by theory, you actually have to do it. And so we've got 5 pillars that we work through. The first pillar is the onboarding, which is all your trauma informed, how to manage somebody who's got every flag in their brain working because they're terrified. They think they're going to die. They're going to get caught. They're going to get found. All the stuff that's involved in helping someone feel safe and trusty. There's a load in that pillar. Then we move them into the rebuild pillar, which is the pillar where they actually start to learn to integrate into the community and feel safe in the community. Libraries, learn about our culture, learn about our slang, learn about all the stuff about living in Australia. Then when they're ready and they've got to the point where we think that their trauma is under control and they're feeling that they're ready to start looking for a longer, more stable employment, they move into our Thrive pillar, which is the pillar that's designed to really get them ready for work. And that pillar, those people are actually training for a job with one of our businesses, one of our corporates, for a position. So we're training them for a role, and then we put them in that role as a work experience, paid work experience position. So that way, if it doesn't work for the employer, they can bail out because they've done
Yeah.
the work experience and they're giving them a reference for what they did. They're giving us feedback on what more training they need, or the survivor can leave without feeling like they've failed. Like it's
Yeah.
not a failure. No one feels shame. It's just you're only going in for 6 weeks. That's it.
Yeah.
Most of them end up employed, of course. But we don't want anyone to fail. So we want them to feel that they've gone in successfully, they've got the job, and it's a really big win. So that's those pillars. And then the final pillar is the alumni. And they're important because we have lifelong, we never offboard. We're not a 90-day program. So we actually have them for life because what happens is they go through life stages. We're their family. They've been with us for a year or two. So they're suddenly having babies. All of a sudden, we've got a mums group running. We've got at least 15 babies in our organisation at the
Oh,
moment.
that's fantastic
I
to hear.
know, they've married and got babies, which is a huge sign of that in itself is a huge success. So the alumni, but also they can still come back to we have a lot of peer support social outings where we go, as I said, we'll go to the zoo. If we're doing the Australian culture class, we'll go to the zoo and show them all the animals, and we'll go to the mountains, and there's just lots of outings. We'll invite alumni to come to that for 2 reasons. First, they love to see each other and it's like a big reunion when there's something going on in the holidays. They actually want to, many people get to the point where they realise how far they've come and they now want to start helping people that have been through what they've been through. So they get to volunteer. But even more importantly, the brand new people are seeing, the ones that are still in that onboarding and rebuild stage are seeing people who have gone through, finished their court case, gone on with life, are now in careers or in jobs. Some of them
In
have been on,
families.
having families. Some of them the husbands don't even know.
Wow.
Yeah, they're incognito. They're living in community and no one knows. It's amazing. So it's great for those new ones to see that there is an end. There is a light at the end of the tunnel here. We can get there. Yeah. So the school is fabulous. I love the
Yeah.
school. I love the school for what it does. Yeah.
Now that's amazing to hear. And you were just talking about, they've moved through these various stages, and then they've come back. And you just mentioned that, some of the ones who have the alumni who have graduated, some of even their family don't sort of understand or know what they've gone through. And I mean, I know in schools that we do, privacy is a massive thing. So, depending on who you are in the school, you might know that a child comes from a broken family, or that you can only contact mum, or you can only contact dad. So, or, no correspondence whatsoever to this. If you see this car on site, you know, send in the sirens. So how does, and we know, and we talked about, we talked about the greed, and human trafficking is a lucrative business.
Mm.
There's
The second biggest business in the world.
yeah, and there's,
150 billion US dollars a year profit. Not
that's
gonna go away.
and so it's probably only, unfortunately, it will probably grow, but thankfully there's people like yourself who are fighting that. But how do you maintain privacy? Like, because I mean, I'm sure these people are always looking over their shoulder.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got a whole lot of protocols in place
And I
for
don't expect you to go
yeah,
into the fine details, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
is there a way
And
that
as
you
far
protect
as
their
knowing what
privacy?
you know, we actually have a case management system that's all online, so that we can actually look up. We know every case, who's referred them, what their history, what their medical, and all that. But the biggest thing about our work is that we are focused on their future, not their past. Everybody else is talking to them about them being a victim. We're talking. That's why it's a survivor school. That's why we call the Freedom Hub. We're all about their future. So
Yeah,
the only people that actually know that backstory is myself and the people that work, the two managers for the school, the state lead in Queensland and the state lead in New South Wales. All the volunteers and anybody that works and teaches them, they're teaching them a subject. And if that comes up, they've got to say, "Hey, I'm not allowed to hear about your past. I'm here to help you with your future," etc. And we get them to focus on the future. So confidentiality only really we do, so everyone has to sign their life away to do any
yeah,
work. Any volunteer with us has to be with us for at least 3 or 4 months before we to make sure that they're not got their own issues usually, but we've got to really check people out. Obviously, we've got all the protocols of police checks and all that stuff to do. So anyone that's going to be working with a survivor, they've got to pass all this. We've got to work with them in another area, because otherwise they just all come in passionate. And I learnt very early that a lot of them will come in just to get something on their CV. So we've really got to make sure that if they're studying law or human rights, they just want to work at the Freedom Hub so that they can get it on their CV. So we've really got to make sure we've got the right people in place to do the work. But we're still always looking for volunteers to help with teaching and with helping in the school. They've just got a lot more protocols and policies to go through to be allowed to start working directly with survivors. When we take them out and about, no one knows us. No one knows where our school is except for the survivors and the teachers, and they sign their life away on that. It's always set up so that the place that we're at is a public place, but so that they can blend in and it doesn't look weird. And everyone thinks we're teaching migrants English.
yeah,
So in that building, and if we are having an external, like a trauma-informed Pilates or yoga teacher or music teacher or somebody coming in to run something, not only do they have to do a mini course online and have tests and everything that we give them on trauma, they have to have a Freedom Hub buddy with them, and survivors all have false names stuck on them because they won't remember what false name they've been given. So there's no way they'll be able to know the names, and we've always got someone there to make sure no stories are told or photos are taken or anything like that.
yeah,
There's a whole lot of stuff like that that's put in there, and the hardest one is the school itself, because it's trying to get the survivors not to tell anyone or save on their phone where they are, because the first thing a perpetrator will do if they find them is take their phone,
yeah,
and that puts everybody's lives in risk. So we do have a lot of, they're not allowed to write that down. They don't even get told the address. We have to meet them at a station and walk them to the school. And eventually they know where it is, but they haven't got it written anywhere.
yeah,
There's a lot of stuff in place to try and do the best. But we've still had to move the school 3 times in Sydney,
yeah,
breaching and safety. Yeah. And it's an expensive exercise. It's, you lose your bond, thousands of dollars every time you want to look at real estate, it's gone up, hasn't it? So it's just, yeah, it's really very hard. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, Sally, you and your team are doing amazing things, and I know now that 14-year-old daughter of yours who came home crying and having to write an essay about slavery, is now actually working with
Yes.
you.
Yes. So she's now one of our human rights, and business consultants. So she's tucking away the money there.
So
No, actually, what's brilliant about her is because of her heart, she's just charging a normal wage, not a consultant wage, and the Freedom Hub's making quite a lot of profit. Yeah,
yeah.
so that really helps our survivors. She
Now,
could be charging a lot more.
absolutely, absolutely. As a consultant, I mean, wow, you can the sky's almost the limit, really.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to who you partner with. And whilst yes, she is your daughter and she has a passion for that, I mean, we still have bills to pay. But I guess that comes down to as well the buy-in to what the Freedom Hub is actually doing is looking beyond yourself
Yep.
to the greater picture. Which I guess it leads me to my final question is so we talked about, and you mentioned, $5 a day, and some of these migrants go, yeah, that's fantastic. I can actually live off $2 a day and send $3 back to my family, or I can do a whole range of things. But the phrases are bandied about, and I understand them, but I'll get you to explain them. But some people they have jobs, they have, I guess, freedom to come and go to this job, and they go home and they get paid, but they don't have a living wage.
Hmm.
So what's the difference between getting paid and actually having a living wage?
Well, a living wage, there's actually, I only know this because of a diplomat, really. For people to actually calculate that, or how they calculated our wage in Berlin anyway, there's a regular fortnightly shop done, or just for eggs, milk, but all your basics
Yep.
are done by experts, and they work out how much it would cost just to have your basics, and then they multiply that out and work it out that this is what it would be to be able to live on your basics. Yeah. So for some people, because we convert into Australian dollars, it's, a living wage here right now. You can't get a house, can you?
No.
Yeah, but that's not really a living wage because houses are not, they're a luxury, not a living, accommodations is the key, isn't it? So it's really in that country, what is a living wage? That's the thing. Each country's got a different wage level to live in. So we can look like we're paying somebody a lot, or we can look like we're paying someone not enough, or we think we're paying them lots and it's actually needs to be a lot more. Yeah, so that's calculated independent
From
from
in
the company.
Okay.
And there's different platforms as well. And of course, now since the Modern Slavery Act is out, there's platforms for everything, risk for living wages, for all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Well, Sally, I'm going to thank you for your time. Well, we've hit an hour and it's just gone by. So, and we could probably talk for another hour more about the details of this. But I value your time, and I respect that you are tremendously busy. By the sound of it, I'm excited to see what's coming. You've whet my appetite with. You haven't signed the contract yet, so I'm not saying anything.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. But just before we wrap up, I've just got a few last questions just to ask you. The first one is, now it wouldn't be the Tattooed Teacher podcast if I didn't ask you, do you have any tattoos?
No, I don't. Not one. Not
Not
one.
one. Not one. A diplomat's wife, the wife of a sailor, no
He's not a
tattoos.
sailor, he's an officer.
Well, he is. Yes. Well, he did very well in the Navy. So yes. So, but also a North Sydney girl. So I know you guys can. You tend to be a little bit. You look all sugar and sweet, but then you play up a little bit. I've known a
Yeah,
few of you guys. Well,
absolutely.
that's. Are you planning on getting any?
Well, funnily enough, I've been looking at this eyebrow business. And I said to my daughter, I might get my first tattoo soon. All my girlfriends are getting tattooed eyebrows. And I'm like, it's quite nice because I'm blonde and I've got no eyebrows. I'm always having to put mascara or
Yep.
brow stuff on. So I am thinking of getting an eyebrow tattoo.
Hey, and there's a revenue stream as well.
There's a what?
There's another revenue stream for you as well. You could start an eyebrow tattooing business.
Yes, there's never enough revenue streams for me. I'm such an entrepreneur. I just like, a new area. Let's do something.
Absolutely. I've just dropped that little seed there. Let's see what happens.
Yep, yep, yep. We haven't even talked about our retail, but let's just not go there. Yep.
No, no. Next question that I have is like you have challenged yourself daily with what you do, but is there something that you'd like to challenge people who are listening with something? Now, it doesn't have to be a huge thing; it could be just something small, but just a challenge to put out there.
Well, I still think awareness is the answer to everything as far as this topic goes. People just don't know what's going on and they don't know enough about it. So, our LinkedIn page is where I try, if people are interested in the cause and learning more about it, that's where I would post everything to do with the issue of modern day slavery. So, it's any latest article, all about the palm scream, any blogs we're writing. We've got a lot of researchers. Sydney Uni loves finding researchers for us. So I'm constantly giving them topics, till I think right now we're writing, I'm just trying to think. No, I can't. I thought I had it, but yeah, they're writing great articles that are current for now, and they get loaded regularly. Everything goes into LinkedIn, so that's the best way to stay aware. To be honest, if you want to know more about us, just jump on the website. Really, there's everything. You can get involved from volunteering to fundraising to running events to, there's we need lots of volunteers and lots of people involved with the advocacy and the fundraising and all that. So you just jump on the freedomhub.org, O-R-G, not com, org.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, you beat me to the punch with that. I was going to say, if anyone wants to find out more about what you do and maybe get involved and maybe help in any one of those things that you mentioned, how would they get in contact with you? But we know it's freedomhub.
Yep. And there's a contact us form, and there's also a get involved page, which shows all the things you can do to get involved. So the website's great in that regards. And then LinkedIn's the most current, more current than anything out there.
Yep.
Even the Global
Well,
Slavery Index is now getting very old.
yeah.
We really keep it up to date with what's going on in the world about slavery. Yep. But
Well, I
especially
might.
Australia.
Yeah, and I'll definitely make sure they go in the show notes for that.
Yeah,
But
thanks.
Sally, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you're doing for those who can't do it for themselves
Thank
at this
you.
point in their journey. But obviously, from what you are doing and when you help those, they are starting to pay it forward to those who need it again. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do. And I know that you are loved and appreciated around the world, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, it would mean so much to me if you could either like, follow, and subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. The music was by DJ Fruit Salad. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool. Be blessed.